We good? Why aren't we seeing anything? Is this right? Should we be seeing something else on the screen other than this? Aren't they usually, or maybe it's,
It's a Zoom meeting. We don't have anybody.
I guess since we don't have anyone on Zoom, we
Yeah,
just won't
nobody
see
on
the
Zoom.
box at all.
Right.
No, it's just.
This is
I
it.
will.
Okay. All right. I would like to call to order the Monday, June 3rd meeting of the Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Bernstein? Alder DePula?
Here.
Alder Moore?
Here.
Alder Wood?
Here.
Alder Rademacher? Here. Alder Holmquist is excused. Mayor O'Connor?
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the March 18th, April 15th, and April 16th meetings?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We have one appearance tonight. I have a proclamation to read. I don't think we have anyone else who wishes to speak, so I will read the proclamation. Whereas since 1970, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer questioning, plus LGBTQ plus people have gathered and marched in the month of June to demonstrate for equal rights, to recognize the impact that LGBTQ plus individuals have had on history locally, nationally, and internationally, and to remember members of the community who have been lost to hate crimes or HIV/AIDS. And whereas the city of Monona strives to be a place that is a comfortable and enjoyable for any person to live, I think we're missing a word there, where all people are treated and perceive they are treated fairly and respectfully, where participation in civic life is open to all, and all people perceive their contributions are valued, and where the values of all groups, including those who have too often been left behind and left out, are reflected. And whereas the city of Monona appreciates the cultural, civic, and economic contributions of the LGBTQ plus community, which strengthen our social welfare, and finds it imperative that all people in our community, regardless of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers and community leaders. Whereas, while we as a community embrace new definitions of sexuality and gender, we also recognize that the need for awareness remains vital to end discrimination and prejudice. And whereas, as the rainbow flag is widely recognized as a symbol of pride, inclusion, and support for the LGBTQ plus community, the city of Monona will proudly display the rainbow flag throughout the month of June to encourage education and the need to engage in dialogue, build acceptance, and continue to advance equal rights. Now therefore I, Mary Kay O'Connor, Mayor of the City of Monona, Dane County, Wisconsin, do hereby declare the month of June as LGBTQ plus Pride Month, and urge residents to recognize the contributions made by members of the LGBTQ plus community and continue to celebrate and build a culture of inclusiveness and acceptance in the City of Monona. Signed in the City of Monona, Dane County, Wisconsin, this 3rd day of June, 2024, Mary Kay O'Connor, Mayor. Thank you. And Chief, I was going to ask you, is the flag
It's right.
flying good?
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, there is no public hearing, there is no consent agenda. Under council action items, there is no unfinished business, so the first item is HA, consideration of resolution 24-6-2710, approval to submit 2023 compliance maintenance annual report, CMAR, review and recommendations put forth by the Public Works Director, and I think Dan would like this starred for immediate approval.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to take this out of order.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Is there a motion to, on the resolution itself?
Motion to approve and accept it.
Second.
Dan?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. In the packet, you have the annual CMAR that we are required to complete each year, review it here at City Hall. or at City Council, and then once it's approved, submit the resolution acceptance to the DNR. It's essentially a report card on our sewer system operations and maintenance each year that we have to turn into the DNR. Once again, not sure if you've read the CMAR document, and we do have a grade average of an A, a 4.0 once again. And it's through good work and dedication from the utility staff that we have within the department. I guess what I'd like to point out, just a few items in this report before you entertain approval, is on the very first page of the report, item 3. This is one of the key items that the DNR wants to see that we touch on, as having dedicated funding to do equipment replacement. And this covers any needed replacement for motors, impellers, and things like that, and that we keep up the maintenance. And in the annual sanitary sewer budget that we have, we dedicate $25,000 every year. And if we spend money out of that, we replenish it when we approve the budget every year. So this is City Council's commitment to the state that we supply funding to maintain the equipment of the sanitary sewer lift station system as needed each year. The very next page, item number 4, is future planning. They also want to see the city, what we have in mind for future planning. Next year, in the 2025 budget, as part of the road reconstruction project, we have a goal of lining the sanitary sewer main towards the end of that project. So we did identify that in this document. We also identify the next phase being engineering for continued review of the sanitary sewer system, identifying more areas that we can address I&I. So you'll be seeing that brought forward again in the 2025 budget. Flipping further through the document on what's identified as page 23, we have the sewer line televising number. Last year, we fell short of our goal. We like to televise about 33% of our system each year. Because of staff turnover and scheduling, we were only able to do 2.7%. We are on track this year to get back in line with the 33%. So in next year at this time, that number will be back up to the standard that we do each year. And flipping the page on page 24, item 4, where it says overflows. I'm sure you've seen commercials on TV and heard news items on the radio about the need to call Digger's Hotline. We did have a sanitary sewer overflow last year because there was a contractor that did not call Digger's Hotline, and they assumed because they were trenching in a backyard that there would be no infrastructure there. So what ended up happening was they bored right through sanitary sewer line with a downspout, which caused that resident's sewer lateral to back up and discharge some sewage onto their grass. So we did have to report that, and the city took the knock for that. But it was 100% on the contractor for failing to call Digger's Hotline. Had they called Digger's Hotline, they would have known that we had a sanitary sewer main there, and they would have done a different approach to laying that downspout. So, and then the very last page of the document is the sheet that we submit to the DNR. It's name of the governing body, which is Monona City Council, the date we take action on our resolution, and by us submitting this to the state, it says that I presented this document to you. You heard and viewed the annual report card, and you accept it. So after tonight, this will be mailed into the DNR. Be happy to answer any questions you may have for me.
Any questions? Rick?
I don't, oh, go ahead.
On page 20, there's a reference on 6.3 to an energy study. And I'm just curious, have we done those before? Is there any thought of doing those in the future? Is there something that we might benefit from doing an energy study?
We have not done an energy study. I have not been planning to do one. All of our lift stations, we have the variable speed drives. So that regulates the amperage in motors, and the variable speed fluctuates the motor as needed during pumping. This is probably one of the better ways that we can achieve energy efficiency in our pumping stations. But at this time, we do not have a plan to do energy studies.
Do they normally come up with energy savings when those are done? Do you have any experience
I
with
have
that?
no experience with them. In my career, I've never been part of an energy study.
Okay. So it's kind of an unknown at this point.
For me, it is,
Yeah.
yeah. To my knowledge, Monona hasn't done one yet either.
Okay.
The more modern lift stations that we have, that have the submersible pumps, those are efficient pumping systems. We will be doing the Midmore and Winnequa Road pumping stations. We're converting those over to submersibles. So in addition to having the VFDs and modern motors, those stations will be efficient as well in the future.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Nancy?
Yeah, well, first I just want to say congratulations on the A. Not at all surprised. We all know we have fantastic Public Works Department, as well as a fantastic staff overall in the city. And second, I just wanted to explain, in case anybody was wondering, why I suggested taking it out of order, and that is that, you know, this is just an approval that DNR requires of the city council. There's no funding attached to it. It's just an annual report that has to be submitted, so there's no reason to hold it back. It's
Right.
not like we have to do anything with it.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I should ask for that earlier.
yeah.
In fact, Alderwood mentioned earlier, he thought it was something we could probably just put on a consent agenda in the future,
Right.
True.
really,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
add that to our list of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Anything else? All in favor of approving the report, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Next, item B, consideration of resolution 24-6-2711, approval of a 3-year police school resource officer agreement between the city of Monona, the Monona Grove School District, and the village of Cottage Grove, put forth by the police chief. Chief.
Happy Pride, everyone. Good evening now. So our current agreement with the school district is coming due. The agreement was for 3 years. It's typically for 3 years. The now outgoing superintendent approached me recently and expressed that the school district would like to enter into a new agreement with the city and the village of Cottage Grove for a continuance of the SRO program. What you see in the packet that is highlighted in yellow is what's changed. Everything else is the same as the previous agreement. And if you allow me just to take an opportunity, because I was asked a really good question in finance as to how it's going. And some of you have done the job for me, thank you, in highlighting some of those from our monthly reports that we produce, sort of the synopsis of contacts that the SRO is engaged in every month. If you allow me just a quick opportunity just to highlight some of those from April's monthly report. So our SRO, who's not just, he is stationed out of our wonderful high school, but he is responsible also for MG21 and Winnequa. In addition to that, as an aside from this particular agreement, we also provide services and support, obviously not as in-depthly as our public schools that we're in contract with, but to our private school as well as our charter school in town. So just to keep that in mind, we're not neglecting some of our children in Monona because they're not affiliated with the school district. We're also providing them with the resources as well, but not as in-depthly as we are with Monona Grove. So last month alone, the month of April alone, SRO Wunsch had 50 contacts with students. I will tell you that the vast majority of those contacts, overwhelmingly, are student-initiated contacts, where students are going to our SRO to ask a question, to report crimes, to talk about home life and some concerns that they might have, or to report suspicious activity in and around the school. And so I'll just highlight a couple. I won't take all day here, promise you. On April 1st, the SRO received a phone call from a New Hampshire Police Department reporting that a Monona Grove High School student called their high school to report a bomb threat and that they were going to shoot up the school. So as you can imagine, that is a pretty traumatic type of call that this New Hampshire Police Department and school was addressing. Because of the fact that our SRO was embedded in the school, had immediate quick access to information, had sound relationships with the school administration, was able to quickly relay that information and obtain information about that student, and was able to follow up promptly with that student who had allegedly made those threats. That the SRO and the student had a rapport, and with the permission of their parents, interviewed that student and received a full confession of that bomb threat, right? So we were able to address that right away. I will tell you that, could that happen if our SRO was not in the school? Potentially. Could it happen as quickly and efficiently and the best possible way it happened in this case? Probably not. I'm just going to be candid with you. So I believe that there was benefit of having the embedded SRO with those relationships in that situation to help resolve that particular case. Two more examples, and I promise I'll be brief. MG21 staff contacted the SRO to report a sexual assault of a student that was reported to the MG21 staff. The SRO interviewed 3 subjects and documented the statements and made a referral to the DA's office. The reason I'm highlighting that is because there's trust there. There's trust not only with the SRO and the student, there's trust with the staff and the SRO. There's a relationship that's been built. There's an understanding of role and responsibility of the SRO and the role of the faculty as well. Would that have happened were the SRO not in the school? Yes, there's a mandatory reporting that schools have to do. However, would it have happened as efficiently and as delicately? I can only hope. But I'm going to tell you frankly that no, it probably would not have happened as seamlessly as that reporting happened. One more. The SRO was in his office at the high school on April 24th, and he heard a loud crash and yelling coming from a conference room across the hall. He immediately went to investigate and found out that a student was highly upset and was on the phone. The student was receiving threats from another student, as it turned out, to be a drug debt that was owed to them. The SRO, again, having a relationship with this student, learned that the student planned to fight at an off-campus location. The SRO spent the time and relied on his rapport to defuse the situation, and as far as we know, there was no fight, right? This happens probably every day. There's probably some things that the SRO doesn't report and document because it's the natural course of his duty. And I can tell you that there's value in our SRO program. Now, one of the things that we addressed from the last time I came to this body and the school district was how the SRO worked and functioned in the school. I, as the new chief, took ownership of the police department not doing a good enough job of sort of filtering out, frankly, the discretion of the SRO and what calls we should be addressing as law enforcement and what the school should be addressing. And at the school board meeting, the school district took responsibility of their end. Maybe there's some things they should not have tapped the SRO and said, hey, please write this ticket. We're in a good place, in my opinion, as your chief of police, in that we are seeing that the vast majority of contacts, the lunch fights, the pushing matches, the theft even of school property is being addressed, in my opinion, appropriately so, by the school as an in-school consequence and being investigated with the assistance often by the SRO if we're called upon. But that is being addressed and handled as an in-school consequence. Now, there are some instances in which the level of activity rises to a significant crime somebody's put in the hospital, right, or something more egregious and substantial. The SRO has it on my standing directive that he goes to either me or our Assistant Chief of Police to review whether it should be a law enforcement consequence, for lack of a better term, or if it should remain in the school. That's been consistent for 3 years, and our SRO has been doing a very good job, well, under 3 years, but our SRO has been doing a very good job of making sure that he gets proper direction from somebody in command staff, myself or the assistant chief. The school, I'm going to give them credit too, has done a fabulous job of handling things within the school. Be it reported to the SRO and the SRO makes contact with school administration, or the school becomes aware of it and addresses it on their own. There's a lot of in-school consequences that have been occurring and not been referred to the SRO, and no citations have been issued, no arrests have been made. For things like smoking on school campus, or bringing a vape device on school campus, or being disorderly on school campus, or even being involved in a simple fight on school campus. Not to diminish the significance of battery, but kids with their undeveloped brains, we have to understand that not everything should result in an arrest, right? That can be, as we know, more traumatic than the event itself, right? The process. So, our SRO, in my opinion, has done a wonderful job adapting to the new boss and to the new expectations as to what this council or previous council had expected from its SRO, and as well as the school board expected from its SRO. So this is coming before you as a new MRO at the request of the superintendent. I'm told that the incoming superintendent supports this as well. But procedurally, this has to go before the school board, who votes on it on the 12th of June. We have a 2-read policy here in our wonderful city, so I wanted to get this to you prior to that so that we can, you all will have the opportunity to ask more questions, make any recommended changes, etc., and I can present that to the board before their June 12th meeting, and or you will be prepared to take action on it at the next council meeting. I will be there for the school board meeting. They're aware I'm going to be there. I've offered myself up for any questions prior to that independently. So far, nobody has reached out, and I am told that there's a high likelihood that this will get passed, but you never know, right? So, any questions? I'm here for questions.
Teresa?
Yes. I'm a big fan of this position, and I think when my
has been how the state.
I think my daughter even has her photograph in the school yearbook with Officer Luke. He's a really popular friend of these students, and we've all read the reports that Chief Cheney that submits in our packets about the types of concerns students are bringing, and it's heartbreaking at points. Chief, my question to you is this position, I mean, we don't want to leave it up to personality. You know, Officer Luke could just be a great guy, and the next person in that position might not. You know, what are some of the training and the structure that you put around this position to ensure that that same good level of service continues?
Yeah, that's a great question. Number one is that there are clear expectations that I, as the police chief, have, but also the school district has, as to what type of person should be in that role. You really have to, I think I've been on the record of saying you couldn't pay me enough to do that job, right? I really mean it. I don't know if I can do that job, okay? I'll just be honest, but I know who can, right? One of the things I tell people mostly about my job is that I don't have to be an expert on everything. I just have to know who the experts are, right? And Luke is an expert, and we have other potential experts within the department that I think would be fabulous SROs. You have to give them the proper training, right? You have to give them proper direction so that they understand their role and responsibility. And I'm fortunate that we have a current department that's full of a lot of patient, caring, compassionate people that will, you know, most of them will do well in that role. But yeah, this is a very challenging position, and we're so used to running in, putting out the fire, so to speak, saving the day, making the decisions, and we're the sole person that makes that decision oftentimes, right? I'm not there to hold hands and tell people, you know, to arrest, not arrest, et cetera. We have to trust that that officer can make that decision. Well, we just need to give them the tools. We need to lay the framework, give them the tools, give them some examples, be available for questions while they are starting off, and then they'll do just fine. The school board, likely the administration, will be a part of the selection process. So they will have a say. They will be a part of the interview process when that next, because Luke's not going to do this forever. They will be a part of the process. So my hope, well, I have no doubt that with our current cadre, there are people qualified to do that role. My hope is that when Luke does move beyond this position, is that it'll be seamless. There'll be cross-training, that somebody can shadow Luke for a while, that there can be introductions, that they can acclimate themselves before being thrown in the deep end, so to speak, unlike your chief. So there'll be opportunity there for the school to learn and get to know their new SRO. And, you know, think about it, you're pulling a resource from the school that, to your point, Alder Rademacher, Luke is well liked, right? Mm-hmm. He's known by a lot of kids. I just helped him do an escort for the tennis team that went to state, and Luke was just at graduation this past weekend by invite, right?
He was invited on field trips.
And field trips.
Yeah,
this man has gone to New York City
yeah.
on field trips. So it's like I never got that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I mean, there are other Lukes out there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm sort of priming them now, right,
Okay.
to do that job. But hopefully whoever takes after me is also going to sort of have the same philosophy. Whomever you hire, this community hires, is going to have that same philosophy that I have, because I think it's working well.
Yeah. Having, you know, when the Monona ARC groups first started meeting a few years ago, it was a topic of conversation. You know, SROs, what do the statistics say? Is this a good idea? There were some folks in the room that were genuinely concerned and not supportive. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to have it out there recorded and explain how we can ensure that the next officer is just as, you know, compassionate as this one.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that is really challenging, and I actually found to be pretty challenging when I was presented with those questions at the school board meeting the last time this contract came up for discussion, was, Chief, where is the data to prove that something didn't happen because of an SRO? There's no Harvard study, it's very challenging to prove what you've deterred or what you've prevented when the thing didn't happen. No suspect is going to come to us and say, other than sometimes a pursuit, but suspect is going to come to us and say, I did not commit this crime, or I did not do this behavior because I knew Officer Luke was in the school. But we kind of have that spidey sense that there is some of that happening. We just don't have a good way to measure that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Doug?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think since we hit the reset button on this a couple of years ago, that the way you've described how it's been working now with the school taking care of the school things and the review at your level on some of the enforcement actions, I think that's pretty much exactly what we were looking for. So I think sounds great.
Okay, good.
Anyone else? Nancy? Or-
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, you know, it certainly occurs to me that in terms of where we came from, you know, if you're in that kind of position and, you know, we're all in a position to, by and large, to want to please, right? And certainly be a good team player and a good colleague. And so, you know, I think it would probably just over the years became a slippery slope of the school was asking, right, to the, you know, Luke, because he is so talented, you know, was asking Luke to do things that probably, you know, either wasn't in the job description or he wasn't sure and he wanted to be helpful and so he would, and then it, you know, and it became a slippery slope from both sides. So I think the reset, as you said,
Yeah.
is a smart move, and glad it's working for.
I got the impression it just used to be very punitive.
It did.
And now it's more
Yeah.
relationship building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not to say that those relationships weren't there,
Sure.
because, I mean, he was doing that, but,
Right.
yeah, there wasn't my boss said no. You know, when a teacher would tap him on the shoulder and
Yeah.
said, this kid needs a ticket, right?
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
the evidence is there, you have probable cause to write the ticket was more often than not written, versus
Mm-hmm.
now it is, my boss says no, and here's why, let's talk this through.
Mhm.
So, I told him, blame me. I tell most of my officers, just blame me for stuff, that's fine.
Just like being a parent. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyone else? Well, Chief, I'll be interested to see how the school board vote goes next week, but I give you a lot of credit for kind of turning this around, because I know this is one of the first things you did when you came on board, was meeting with all the council and all the school board, and
Yeah.
I think 2 years ago, we weren't so sure this was gonna continue, so.
And now that I think about it, do we also know that the same approach is being taken with the village SRO as with the city SRO?
It's my understanding that the school district has the same expectation.
Sure. Okay.
But I can't speak to
Sure, of
what
course.
their chief
Right.
is telling their
Right.
assigned.
And it's really
SRO.
not our place, I know.
I
but-
believe we're I know we're philosophically
Sure.
aligned. I just don't know what the day-to-day sort of
Yeah.
marching orders are.
Okay.
And, you know, they're operating differently because of
Yeah.
younger children too. So
Yeah.
there's a lot fewer things that the cop could even write for anyway,
Yeah.
because the children aren't of age to even receive a citation.
True.
But I will say too, looking at our finance director, is that, just as a reminder, the school district is providing, while the officer is in the school, salary for that officer. So, as I mentioned with the last council that was making a very challenging decision at the time, by voting no to this, you're potentially eliminating a police officer.
Yeah.
True.
Or council's gonna have to find a way to fund to keep our staffing as
Sure.
is. So,
Because he does work for the city during the summer.
Correct.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Okay, well, this will come back in 2 weeks. Moving on, item C, consideration of resolution 24-6-2712, approval of participation in a Wisconsin Bureau of Transportation Safety Grant titled 2024 Speed Grant Task Force, also put forth by the chief, and this is starred for immediate approval, and if you'd like to explain why it's starred before we
Yeah.
vote on that.
Thank you, Mayor. This is entirely your chief's whoopsie and my fault entirely. The year got away from me. June is now here. We would like to start this in June. We, as in our task force of other municipalities who have already agreed to start this in June. This was my fault. So I'm asking for this to be started for immediate consideration and approval.
Is there a motion to take this out of order?
We have to
Motion to take
second.
it out of order?
Yeah. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second.
Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yes, thank you. The 2024 speed grant from June, hopefully if you say yes, to August. Again, we're part of a consortium that includes Cottage Grove, DeForest, McFarland, Oregon, Stoughton, and Verona. The reason that the state provides this grant in such a way is because they like when municipalities work together to address larger issues, this one being speed issues. So we typically arrange the enforcement on the same day, generally along the same sort of major thoroughfares in our communities, and try to campaign some of the work that we're doing. We are getting more for this grant than we did in last year when we received this grant and council approved. We got $3,000 last year. We're getting $4,200 this year. There is still the same 25% matching grant, which means we have to do $1,050 of on-duty time to get to that 25% match. We are going to breeze through this. If you authorize this, we have officers that are eager and willing to do this grant work. This also coincides with the grant work that's already in existence right now, so the OWI grant that we're working, as well as the seatbelt grant that we're working.
Any questions?
I have one. Chief, you mentioned 1 day, did I hear you say? Or maybe I misheard. This work would go between June 1st and August 31st, is that correct?
Yeah, I wasn't clear. You're absolutely right, June 1st to August. We, as the task force, we have to coordinate. We can't, for example, Monona can't do it today, and then Fitchburg does, I'm sorry,
Okay.
not Fitchburg, they're not part of it. DeForest
Sure.
does it tomorrow. We all have to coordinate. Poor Lieutenant Kurt Weigel has to coordinate with all of the other agencies, and we have to work sort of uniformly. So that we
Okay.
operationally, we have to execute. When we do the enforcement, it has to be during the same time frame.
Okay. But then would there also be those 2 months, during those 2 months, there would perhaps be, what sorts of,
I understand your question now.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
just-
We're looking at about 6 to 8 operational
operation, okay.
enforcement activity throughout
it.
each month. So
Oh,
we typically
wow.
do 4-hour segments. So where an officer can sign up to work a grant for 4 hours, and
Okay.
we would execute that on a Tuesday between the hours of fill in the blanks, right? And then we would do 5 more of those. But there may be times in which, for example, we're coming at the end of the month, and we're sort of managing this resource, and we're like, well, there's potential for us to do a 10-hour shift if somebody wants to come in on their off time, and 10 hours of traffic as if you're a trooper, right? And we do have officers that are quite willing to do that as well. And again, this is your money because you're state taxpayers, but it is not city money that's going to be utilized to fund that.
Is this an annual program every year?
It is.
And is it always between June, July, and August?
Typically.
Typically, I ask because there seems, the citizens that come to me with concerns about speeding, it is associated with school drop-off, pickup, students. It seems to be related to school traffic.
Which I can appreciate, and something that is obviously on our radar, as
Sure.
you know, Alder Rademacher. These state grants typically focus on state highways,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Not that you're entirely, absolutely 100% bound by them, but yes, they want us working on or county or state highways
Okay.
for the enforcement.
I know, parents, you're running late and they're racing to get their kid to school, but,
Yeah.
so that those little interior roads would not be
Included in the
included in
grant.
this, okay.
Right.
Got it.
And I've made I've had discussions with the state administrators of the grant that I think that, if you address something at Cold Spring and Monona before it gets to the Beltline, somebody's probably
Sure.
not going to then speed, hopefully,
Right.
and harm themselves or somebody else while driving 90 on the Beltline if I stop them going 10 over on Monona Drive, right? We call those the corridors, that if, there's a presence on the corridor, you're likely to, and there's evidence to prove that, you're likely to dissuade and deter dangerous behavior ahead,
Yeah.
right? But I'm not the state, and I don't control, as you know, where we can do this. So I say yes to the money if the council approves, and we do our part. We try to do our part. But we're not neglecting those other areas. I
Right.
mean, that's sort of our day-to-day responsibility. This is a focused responsibility.
Rick?
Do you have a sense of what kind of results you've gotten in the past, or what you might be expecting this time around?
So I don't have it handy, Alder, but you had the wonderful suggestion of starting to include that in our monthly reports. Since you've done that, we've started including a separate paragraph with the data in our monthly reports, not only what we do as an agency, but what the task force has done. So if you give me a second, I can look up what we did in April, if you're curious. Just give me a second here. So, month of April this year, we conducted 12 hours of our seatbelt grant overtime. So again, for speed, we would include that in this summary. 12 hours of seatbelt grant overtime, issued 25 citations and 5 warnings. The consortium April seatbelt grant efforts totaled 36 officers, deployed 158 total hours, resulting in 137 citations and 92 warnings. To my earlier point about the SRO in the school, it's very challenging to look at data to indicate what we've prevented locally. But statewide, if you look at the comparisons between where we were at with fatal crashes that was a result of speed, that has gone down statewide. Not by much, but it has gone down. So 2023 speed-related crashes contributing factor 14% of all crashes and 27% of fatal crashes. And I think that was like one figure higher when they previously did that study.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Nancy?
Yeah, so you mentioned that our percentage of the coffer went up to 4,200. Is that because our percentage of speeding went up, and so they decided they better give us more of a portion of the grant, or just because you're a good negotiator, or how did that happen?
Oh, it's certainly not me. And then, again, I'll give Lieutenant Weigel, who's the administrator for this whole task force, a lot of credit. He's our main contact with DOT. I think the money is there, Alder, if we want to use it. That goes well and beyond the $4,200 that we're getting this year. We are a small agency, so there's so many cops and so many hours in a day that we're able to dedicate to a grant. For example, we have $10,000 in our seatbelt grant, if you recall, right? We have $7,500 for our OWI grant. Now this adds another $4,200. And all of this is personal time of the officers that they dedicate to come in to work these grants. Yes, money, overtime, but we do it because we care too. I would argue that if we had the availability and the people that wanted to do $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 worth of enforcement, we probably would get that. One of the things, as you know, I'm asking for as an additional body in the referendum as a traffic officer. Based on internal conversations of who has expressed interest in that role, if the referendum passes and this body approves that addition, I guarantee you we would increase this amount in future years, because we at least have at minimum one officer who would be more than happy on a Thursday that they're scheduled off to come in and do traffic enforcement. So the money is there, and they're not necessarily basing it on sort of the fact that we're writing a lot more tickets. That might be a part of it. Dane County in and of itself is just, it's there's a need in our county. And we have an alder here that sits on the traffic commission, right? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Who else?
Oh,
I
was wrong.
Okay. So there's certainly conversations about there being a need for the money to be here in Dane County. When we don't spend it, it goes to elsewhere. And oftentimes it goes outside of Dane County. So we as a group, including our counterparts at Madison, we try to keep those resources here in Dane County as much as we can. But we've lost money over the years because we simply have not been able to staff these grants. That trend has turned around.
Well, I'm also recalling when these grants first came up in my early years on the council that, one of the things that was expressed then is that the grants are made available not to be jacking up the tickets, but rather to serve as a deterrent. I mean, the fact that the grants are out there and that we have officers out there using those grants is well publicized, and even where they're using those grants is well publicized as a deterrent. So it's not about,
The goal is voluntary compliance.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Council.
Next and final item also started for immediate action. Item D, consideration of resolution 24-6-2714, authorizing the borrowing of $1.2 million in single payment taxable general obligation notes put forth by the finance director. Mark, would you like to explain why this is started for immediate approval?
Yeah, this is based on, we already purchased the property, so this is reimbursing us the money.
This is for the properties on Monona Drive?
Yes.
Or the one property?
One property.
Is there a motion to take this out of order?
I move to take it out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I vote no.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve?
Second.
Mark?
Yeah, this is just a short-term note with Lake Ridge Bank. This is for a property that's in TIF number 7. It's already been purchased, so we already spent the money, came out of our funds already, so this is reimbursing us for that. So this will refinance this in probably less than sometime early next year. This 1.2 will be a lot less because we'll have our TIF increment from the next year, so it'll probably be around 800,000 to 700,000 at that time. But we'll also be rolling this into. We have 2 agreements coming due. The 2 agreements related to North Point and Whitehorse properties in TIF number 6. Well, both are taxable, so we'll roll it into one big note at that time.
Okay, any questions for Mark? Rick?
What's the rate here?
What's the rate? The rate would be around 6% roughly.
6? That's higher than we've had before, right?
It is because it's for a local bank. It's not supported by general obligation where you actually go out to the bond market, so it's always a little bit higher.
Oh,
It's taxable.
Yeah.
It's taxable too at the same time.
yeah, okay.
Anyone else? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder DePula,
Aye.
Alder Moore,
Aye.
Alder Wood,
Aye.
Alder Rademacher,
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to reports of committees, commissions, et cetera. Are there any updates on DEI efforts? I would just say that we did receive the recommendations from the DEI committee that's been working on some ways to implement some of the recommendations made by the original report. And Neil is going to be running that by department heads to get some input from them. But we are hoping to bring it to council at the July 1st meeting. So, anything else anyone else has? Any updates or discussion on sustainability efforts?
I think I saw a headline that July 17th or June 17th starts Pollinator Week in Wisconsin.
Oh.
So things you can do all summer long, not just in May.
Okay.
Right?
I guess we'll move on to committee reports. Alder DePula,
No report.
Alder Moore,
No report.
Alder Wood.
Just next Wednesday, the 12th, I think it is, the Parks Board will be meeting at 5 at the Huska Park. It's not a bike tour, but we're going to meet there to sort of walk the park and look at facilities that are there and some that aren't, that are needed. That's it.
Anything, that's it. Alder Rademacher.
I don't have a report. I failed to mention at our last meeting that I just wanted to give a shout out to, there was a group of folks from the Landmarks Committee that got together with some Boy Scout volunteers and a volunteer from Historic Bluebeam Grove a few weeks ago, and we all cleaned up the area around the pagoda, which it was just a really wonderful outing for that committee, for a few of us there, and a good teamwork. It worked really well. So.
Alder Bernstein.
Yeah, I had a library board meeting that was shortened somewhat due to a tornado warning. But one of the items on there, and I met with Ryan afterwards, we didn't get to discuss it as a committee or a board, but there's a new Fair Labor Standards Act requiring overtime for workers who are paid under $44,000, so about $844 a week. And that standard goes up January 1 to $59,000. So if you're making under $1,100, then you have to have overtime. So I don't think it'll cost us additional money in terms of overtime, because that just won't be allowed or budgeted for. But it does mean that the library will probably have to institute some kind of clocking in, clocking out system, so probably by computer. That's going to be a big change. It could be. A lot depends on if the compensation plan is put into place. If it doesn't, then it'll affect a lot more employees than if it doesn't. So something to keep on your budgeting radar. I met with Diane of the Senior Center, and she has set the next 3 meetings for that commission for the June, July, and August. It'll be the 3rd Wednesday of the month, and we'll be working on budget issues primarily, but other matters as well, I suspect. But I had a nice long chat with Diane, and we're just getting to know each other on a professional basis there. And just lastly, I took a tour with Eco Tuesday to File 13. They recycle e-waste, and they've got a really good representation. They do very well. They have a good reputation. They're located on Meyer Road off of Femrite. You have to go pretty far east past Interstate 90. They've been there about 10 years, and they accept a lot of materials for free. So if you go to their website, you can see there are a lot of things they take that won't be any charge whatsoever. Other things they charge by the pound, so depending on how much you're dropping off, it could be a minimal amount that you have to pay. What I was really impressed with is all the certifications that they do to make sure that these things are recycled properly once they leave their warehouse. And I think that's often a problem with a lot of recyclers. You're not quite sure where they're going to end up, if they're really going to be recycled and not be a problem somewhere else rather than here. So they don't do a lot of advertising, but they do give out free pens. So if anybody's interested in a File 13 pen, please stop by.
What's the name of it again, Rick?
File
Vial?
13.
File
F-I-L-E.
13, which is an Army code word for circular file.
Oh, really?
Clever.
Funny.
Got it.
Okay, the city clerk,
No report.
Mark,
No report.
chief, no
No report, Mayor.
report, wow, okay. Well, I don't have a report either, I guess, except to encourage everyone to go to the wood carving competition, which will be starting, 2 days before our next meeting.
That's right,
Or a few
and
more
we're
than
still
2.
looking for volunteers.
Yeah.
So if anybody who wants to volunteer, there's some terrific opportunities still available, and it's just going to be a blast. It just keeps getting better and better and better. So
Hopefully, we're through all this rainy weather by
Oh,
then.
jeez.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
thinking about that.
that'd be nice.
Okay, well, if there is nothing else, there aren't any appointments tonight, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, thank you.
Rick?
Patrick, I call.